start our recording. We will be recording today's, so that if anybody got to, like, if they missed it or anything like that, they can.
I'm listening, Ron.
Hey, can we have everybody mute unless they're speaking? That way it doesn't interrupt the person that is talking. That would be fantastic. We at the Chamber have set these sector meetings up to ensure that the business community has an opportunity to provide insight and feedback to the City Council on the impacts of a B&O tax on their individual sectors before it goes in front of the council for a vote in the first quarter of 2021. What we know from our meetings with the city is that they will be proposing a B&O tax to help with the city's projected general fund deficit. The general fund is the fund that pays for our parks and recreation, human services, police department, city administration, and city improvements. The city believes with the increase in population, they will need additional dollars to sustain the services they currently provide to our community. Currently, we haven't seen a draft on the B&O tax that will impact certain business sectors or how it will be executed. However, we wanted to make sure that every sector had a voice and opportunity to provide comment before a draft was created, ensuring our businesses' voices are heard ahead of time. We at the Chamber appreciate the council members being here to hear feedback from our businesses who are crucial to the Auburn economy and community. I want to thank our council members that are joining us today, Bob Baggett and James J. Raw, for joining us. Also, soon to be joining us will be Jamie Thomas. She is the financial director for the city. She will be here to be able to help answer any of those tough questions that might be thrown that way. Also want to thank Christian Faltenberger from the Outlet Collection Seattle, who is our retail board sector liaison and will be providing feedback to our board on today's meeting, as well as being a resource to you if you have additional questions, concerns after this meeting that you want our board or our city to be aware of. At this time, I would just ask that everybody put themselves on mute if they aren't speaking, just so that we can make sure that we can hear everybody. And then also, if you want to use the raise the hand feature to say a question, feel free to do that, or go ahead and put it in chat, or just jump in when there is an opportunity to. Now we'll just open it up for any kind of comments or questions about the B&O tax and the impact in your guys' industry.
Okay, everyone, if it's okay, I'd like to take a quick second so that everybody can kind of say, since we do have a small enough group to do this, I'd like to kind of give a second for everyone to kind of introduce themselves and who they are and what business they represent. And then we can go into, I would really encourage those who are on, Brad and Gary and Larry, and Susan and or Ronnie to speak on behalf of your business specifically, and how it will affect you guys, and which is the overall goal here. So as most of you already know, I'm Christian Faltenberger. I'm with the Outlet Collection. I'm the general manager and representing the development side of retail. Gary, would you mind kind of introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Gary Oliver, and I'm the CEO and partner with Fieldhouse USA. We're a new youth sports facility there in Auburn, and excited to be with you. Love animals, by the way, the dogs in the background. Not mine. We opened in October. Obviously, we're a 158,000 square foot youth sports facility there, and we offer a wide variety of things, and we're excited about being in the community.
Awesome, thanks, Gary. Brad, if you wouldn't mind,
Sure.
Could you go through your?
Yep. Can you hear me? Okay, sure. I'm Brad Augustine. So I am the founder and managing member of Madrona Real Estate Services. So we built the retail strip shopping area next door to Red Robin. Our anchor tenant is Panera Bread with the drive-through, Qdoba, dentist office, AT&T store, and Sport Clips. And so I am here representing that entity today. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Larry, would you mind?
I'm Larry Ingraham. Happy to be able to participate this evening. We own, operate, develop in various entities the properties that are directly west of what Brad just indicated. 3 buildings. The majors would be Starbucks, FedEx, and Sound Credit Union in the 3 buildings. We manage those and understand how well the tenants are or are not doing in this current environment. And I'll editorialize, I'll save those comments for a bit later.
Thank you, Larry. And Ron and or Susan?
I'm Gosenko Chocolate. We have 3 retail stores here in Auburn, along with our manufacturing facility too. It's been tough, and here representing the retail part of it. And since I think we have a wide range of stores and multiple locations.
All right, thanks, Ronnie. Richard, I see you joined us, Richard Sturgis. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, how you doing? I'm Richard Sturgis. I'm the branch manager here at the Verity Credit Union here at the Outlet Collection. Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. Deb, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Casey. I'm a vice president at Green River College, and I'm also on the Auburn Chamber Board. I wanted to sit in and listen tonight to your feedback.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, I see that you're on. Would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Hey everyone, I'm Elizabeth Miller. I own and run the Auburn Examiner. I'm a chamber member, but I'm also participating to get everyone's feedback and see how they're feeling so I can inform everyone who's not sitting in on these about the B&O tax.
Awesome. Well, thank you for attending.
Hey, great.
Obviously, a lot of us have different things to say about what's going on. So if somebody would like to start, I can finish up. If you guys would like, I can kick us off. But those of you who know me know that I usually have a lot to say, and I don't want to overshadow what everybody's trying to say and accomplish. So if there's a volunteer or somebody who'd like to start and kind of kick us off about how they feel that this will affect their business, that would be great.
Yep, I'd be happy to start. So can you hear me? I'm Brad
Yeah.
Augustine, Madrona Real Estate. So my concern is, I understand B&O tax. We certainly pay a lot of it in Seattle, but the challenge from a landlord's perspective is that the B&O tax doesn't affect us, but it affects our tenants. And a lot of our tenants are national tenants. They're going to look very closely at the tax rates. And if it's a tax that's directly to them, it's perceived as a negative. If it's a sales tax, which is passed on to the consumers, I think it's less noticeable. And I realize that's a whole different form of taxation. But if you had a choice of taxation between you getting a piece of sales tax versus you getting a B&O tax, the B&O tax is not going to drive businesses to come to Auburn. In fact, that's a negative. But sales tax, the consumer pays that. Some people might look at that as a less progressive tax, but at the end of the day, with a B&O tax, they're still going to have to pass that cost on to the consumer. So in my opinion, a sales tax increase that benefits the city of Auburn will go further toward building business and bringing more businesses to Auburn.
That was great, Brad. Thank you. It's also bringing a solution to the table. So thank you very much for that. All right. Who's next? Who would like to speak up next on their behalf?
This is Larry Ingraham. Echo what Brad has said. as well as the reality of this, of all times in my career, is not the time to implement additional taxes that are going to have a direct impact on businesses that employ people, businesses that provide goods and services, or try to provide goods and services in this environment to the Auburn area. If in fact the city needs additional revenue, they need to be encouraged to do what businesses are having to do, what our tenants are having to do, and that's figure out how to do existing or more with less revenue, with less fixed overhead. And a B&O tax has nothing to do with the profitability of the business. That comes right off the top. And we have struggling tenants through absolutely positively no fault of their own, through no fault of how much of their all that they have invested, which is everything. And no matter how hard they work, which I venture to say for many of them, especially the independents, is harder than the rest of us work. And to say that the reward for that is to have less revenue to deal with in how to pay their overhead, how to pay their employees, how to maintain their facilities, how to buy their product, is going in the wrong direction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Larry, for that. Appreciate it. Gary, do you want to kind of step in on, well, you know what, let's stick with the retail component a little bit more. Ronnie, would you mind giving your piece on your side as a business owner perspective?
I think as a business owner right now, we're struggling just to stay in business. It's been, beyond anybody's imagine of something like this. And for us to have to take and have another tax is just, it's another blow. And, we're struggling to stay in business, let alone, and part of the reason that I moved here 18 years ago for my business was because there wasn't a B&O. And, for us to take, and I believe in Auburn, and for us to have 3 stores here in Auburn and then, get hit with another tax, it's just the wrong thing to do. It's not going to help business. It's just going to drive us away. And, we may be in business, we may not be in business. I don't know. It's tough. It is. I've never faced anything. And I tell you, I'm working, 16 hours a day just to try to stay afloat. This is not the easiest thing I've ever done. And I just think it's the wrong thing to do. And it's not going to drive businesses to Auburn. It's going to drive business away. And I believe in, like what you're saying, a sales tax is definitely, something that you can pass on and stuff. But, that B&O comes right off the top, as you say. And it's just, with everything that we've been facing and everything we are facing, I mean, it's tough. It's really tough. I guess any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Oh, this
Thank
is
you.
Larry Ingraham again. I just jump in and add one more thing. I know none of the details, but I understand that our governor has extended the lockdown.
Yes.
Which is devastating. Our restaurateurs, yes, they can do takeout, but the majority of their takeout is to non-existent clientele, as the offices and the surrounding businesses in the area are pretty well shut down. We're not as bad as California, and some of the things we've seen go viral about California, but to add tax onto the continuation of the lockdown is going in the wrong direction.
And hey, guys, let me attempt something here, because as I understand, taxes right now are definitely a difficult conversation. I would like us to look towards the future as well, to understand that we will get out of this, that we will be moving forward, but we are going to get out of this. And right now, I would agree with all of you 100% that a tax is not the right answer for businesses because of how tough things are right now. But we do have to think to a certain degree what it looks like when we've passed this in another 18 months, when we're back to business and back to fully operating, and we have income and revenue coming in. So I would like to see if we can speak to not COVID related, with the understanding that we are going to get out of this. And so, which I'll get to my piece on that here shortly, but those who still want to speak and are going to speak here shortly, I'd like to see if we could try to focus on our future opportunity versus right now. If there's any comments to that, or if there's I know Richard and Gary, you guys want to talk? Richard, is there something you'd like to add on your perspective? Richard? No? Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
At this point here, I'm just listening right now, but just along with what you were just saying here is, what does it look like once we get out of this, and what plan we can cover today? So I'm interested to see where we can get to tonight. So that's the only thing I can add right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. All right, Gary, I know you come from a very different perspective than most of us. So if you wouldn't mind kind of hitting your end of it, and then I'll finish up, and then we can open it up for even more discussion and any questions from our council members.
Yeah, so from our end, can you hear me? Oh, okay. From our end, we're a youth and adult sports facility. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fieldhouse USA, but you can go to fieldhouseusa.com, and we've got 3 locations here in Texas. So we're in a really different environment down here in Texas than where we are in Auburn. In Auburn, we were planning on being open March of 2020. Obviously, that did not happen. We're sitting here. We softly opened the hard court piece in Auburn in October. Really, we were operating at maybe 10% of even the hard court area. Inside of Fieldhouse USA, we've got hard court where we have basketball and volleyball and futsal, but we also have a fitness component. We've got an adventure park component. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Urban Air or Altitude or Big Air, or any of those adventure parks, but we bring that component inside our facilities as well. What we're seeing here in Texas, we were forced to close in Texas March 14th. We were right in the middle of our league season, and we were closed for 79 days by the state of Texas. Really, it ended up being 100 days. And what we saw, we were allowed to open June 1, and it was really slow coming back here. We were right in the middle of the league season. We pushed probably 10,000, 15,000 people through our facilities on a weekend for participation in play. We really saw people did not come back really in June or July. It took getting the kids back in school. And our understanding there is, obviously it got pushed to January 4th today by the governor there, but also the kids aren't back in school. Once the kids went back to school, we saw about 60% of our kids here in Texas go back to school. 40% stayed in that online learning. And we started seeing kids filter back in, kids and parents in a safe, comfortable environment. That took about every 4 weeks to 5 weeks. So more kids you had the alternative to go back and not go from online school. You could go back to school. And we saw things start to trickle in for 2 months, not very well. And then for 2 months, we were back almost to 50%. And then, so if you push that forward to November, from August to November, parents and kids here in Texas, because they'd been in school since August 12th, they were back in Fieldhouse full time. I mean, it was just like wearing masks, socially distancing. We had some courts open, some courts closed, but we really saw it come back to life in that amount of time. From June 1 to November, we were back to almost a norm here in Frisco. There, what I see, we've had 2 GMs on the ground since March. Obviously, that's been tough for us, and I can only feel for the retail people there in Auburn, because to pay your people, you know, from those days that you're closed with no, what we are, we don't sell merchandise. You're either in the facility, we have an income, or we have no income. And if we have no income, you know, we just can't operate. So I will tell you this from a good perspective is we did see this thing come back to life after being closed and dark for 100 days. And from June 1 to November, we're almost back to 100% participation within our occupancy within our occupancy counts here in Texas. So it's going to come back. Do I want to see a new tax or a tax be added on there? Absolutely not, because we're all trying to make it through. You know, you hear the term, we're all in it together. Well, I don't know if I necessarily believe that anymore, because, you know, the people that are up here can make it, and the people, you know, the retail people down here we're struggling, and everybody's struggling. We're youth sports, so we're a low margin. We have to keep it on a certain dollar amount. So, you know, we've asked our landlords to really work with us and help us, and the outlet collection and people we've worked with in the cities down here have been fantastic. And I think that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take a relationship, really everyone truly living up to that and working together to come out of it. I didn't mean to get long-winded, but
No, thanks, Gary, for bringing us around on there. What I'll do is I'll kind of tie it all up, if you don't mind, is because I'm looking at the future. I'm looking at right now, and obviously here at the Outlet Collection, we're definitely on an upward swing when we come out of this. We've got a lot of things in play. Fieldhouse USA is a big cornerstone for us, and we have 2 other large deals that are coming our way as well too, because people still want to do business with us, and because we are set in a very, very good spot, and we've proven as a landlord that we think about our tenants, and we think about our customers first before the dollars that we make. And so but what I want to bring attention to is the fact that we got 100 properties nationwide, and how we operate is we'll have our corporate leasing folks. They're sitting down with the Darden Group, which, if those who aren't familiar with the Darden Group, that's different food groups such as like Olive Garden and Cheesecake Factory and the like. And they come to us and say, you know what, we're going to open up 6 restaurants this year. And we provide them proposals as to where we have spots, what we can do. And then they go do their due diligence, and they start thinking of places where they can go, and what it's going to cost to operate there, and how it's going to work. And then they start running their numbers to determine which locations are most financially beneficial for them to open at. And that's where, just as it stands right now, Washington is very difficult to do that. A lot of retailers and restaurant groups, for example, will choose a less revenue location where they'll gross, say, $4 million, whereas they project they can make $6 million here, but they'll actually make more profit in the $4 million location than they will in the $6 million location, because of all the operational costs that the state of Washington has. And so when we're trying to do deals and trying to make a property take off, such as the Outlet Collection, all those expenses and all those costs come into play when a national retailer and a regional retailer are selecting their next location. And so up to this point, and I'm very thankful for this, the City of Auburn has been at the head of those conversations, because of places like South Center and places like Tacoma that have high cost operations, whether it be through city permitting or business licenses or everything else. Their costs are so through the roof, or take so long, that it's expensive to operate in Tacoma, and it's expensive to operate in Tukwila. And we've proven better than that. And so I don't want to lose that advantage of our nearby tenants, but I also wanted to give you a perspective of when we're trying to do deals with these national regional tenants, these conversations are a big part of that. And Brad came up with a very good solution in regards to sales tax, but I understand that that's going to be a longer and more difficult conversation on how those taxes are charged. But those are big portions of those conversations. And so keeping us competitive in the market on making us more competitive than our local cities has got to be at the forefront of conversation, because you guys both know, given your guys' background, that when it comes to business, I apologize, I'm kind of gotten off on a rant here, but it's very much about where is it easiest to operate, and being competitive in that marketplace. And we need to be that place, and we have that foreground, and revenue drives the growth of a city, right? So when we drive those elements, like what we're doing at the outlet collection, we're going to affect hospitality, we're going to affect entertainment, we're going to drive people to this area if we have the right assets in place. And so we need to take out all barriers that keep us from being able to drive those assets to our properties and drive the revenue and drive the people to our community, to where all of our small businesses and local and or regional national businesses as well succeed. And that's kind of the drive here, is we want to be given the opportunity to present that as a benefit to our potential tenants, to both keep our existing tenants that we have, as well as draw and grab new tenants that could be coming this way, so we can continue to serve our community at the best way we can. And so I know I kind of went a roundabout way, but that's kind of the gist and the heart of what we are trying to communicate to you guys, taking your time out this evening, and I'm very appreciative of that.
So, Christian, I want to add one more. It's Brad Augustine with Madrona Real Estate, but this is an interesting dilemma. So we build real estate properties. We own commercial properties in downtown Seattle, in Anacortes, Kent, Auburn, Friday Harbor, and I can't figure this out, but the property taxes and insurance are what retail landlords call part of the triple net fees that a tenant pays. And so this is kind of an interesting dilemma, and Auburn is in the same boat that Kent, Washington is in. But if you look at what we pay in property taxes, and we pass those property taxes on to our tenants, it is very tough for us to talk to national tenants when they ask how much are your CAM charges and triple net fees. And for some reason, and I think it has to do with the fact that Seattle has a much larger tax base, and therefore they don't have to get as big of a piece of the property taxes that the county is charging. But I need to say this, Auburn has very high property taxes, and so does Kent. And every time we talk to tenants about leasing, the first thing they look at is our triple net fees. And the first thing they say is, wow, we're not sure we can make this work. So you're already, and I don't know how that share works and how Auburn gets its piece of the property taxes, but the taxes on it that are levied clearly are greater on a per square foot basis than anything we manage in Seattle or Anacortes. And Kent and Auburn are both the same. They're both pretty high. So I just think that's super important to understand the dynamics of a tenant who is doing their due diligence, looking at a market. They look at, okay, is there B&O tax? Yes and no. What are property taxes? Are they high? If they're high, they may not lease with us. And that has been a problem for us over the last couple of years.
Yep, and I would agree with that sentiment 100%. We do have a bigger property in this case, and so there's a little bit more of a diversifying of those funds on our side, but it's still, that has been communicated to us as well. So go ahead, Jamie.
Do you mind if I stepped in? I've been taking lots of notes, but I also wanted to share some information with the group. I know that I think that this group has varying degrees of exposure to B&O tax, and I think also our program that we're working on right now. So I'm not trying to talk down to anybody if you already do have experience with B&O tax. I just making sure that everybody is on the same page with what we're proposing and really where the city has come in the last couple of years. So about 2.5 years ago, we're always projecting our financial forecasts out 6 to 10 years. And 2 years ago, and there's always what we call the fiscal cliff, in those out years. And in 2.5 years ago, when we were working on the biennial budget, that fiscal cliff was coming closer. It was approaching within the next 4 years rather than in the outer years of the 6 to 8 to 10 years. And what's causing this is by the time we get to 2023, 2024, we're going to be upside down in our revenues and our expenditures. So we've got about a $10 to $12 million gap between the revenues that we can legally bring in and the expenditures and the costs to provide the services that we're currently providing right now. And the main reason this has occurred is because taxes is the only thing that we have to levy to actually support the services that we pay. So we've got property tax, we have sales tax, and utility taxes. And then the other piece is charges for services and fees. And so that's aside from taxes, that's the only other revenue, generating activity that we have. And those charges for services are usually attributed to development services and permitting fees, which we don't like to have 100% cost recovery for those types of fees, because again, it's the same, it drives businesses away, right? When those development and permitting fees are too expensive, it detracts from business. So we try to find that break-even point with what is a reasonable amount to charge for those charges for services versus what do we subsidize with other general fund taxes. So what we've been trying to do over the last couple of years is really try to figure out how do we diversify our revenue base to continue providing the same level of service. Because not only are we just providing the same level of service, we haven't added any services, but our population continues to increase and there's actually a more demand for service. So that is kind of the constraint on the expenditure side of things. But if we go back to revenues and how do we diversify our revenue base or how do we grow existing revenues, we're really limited. Our property tax, we cannot grow. We're limited to the 1% cap per year, which for Auburn is about $250,000 a year. That's what the 1% annual increase on property tax brings in for the city of Auburn. I have to think a little bit more about why the cost per square foot on property tax is so much higher in Auburn and Kent versus Seattle. Really, most of the property tax that taxpayers pay goes to the county and the state. Very little it actually comes to the city. So a very small portion, a very small portion of it actually comes back to the city. I see a comment that there was the school district bond, and that is also a part of your tax rolls. I would venture to say that most cities have school districts that have outstanding bonds that were passed at certain points, whether it's or even public safety bonds for fire districts and public safety districts and school districts. So pretty much wherever you are, there's going to be bonds on your property tax rolls. That does not come to the city. That again goes directly to the school district via the state. So just as for every kind of a relative, a frame of relativity, 16 cents of every dollar is actually the city of Auburn's portion of the property tax. So every dollar paid, 16 cents is the city. I'm trying to do the math. I think that there is maybe there could be, it's a good explanation that has to do with a bigger tax base and maybe having such a really large taxpayers and really expensive pieces of property tax in the city of Seattle helps distribute and take away some of the tax from other properties. I'm not exactly sure if that is the reason or not. So that is an interesting situation. On the sales tax side, we cannot increase the sales tax rate. So we're limited to a certain percentage of sales tax that we can levy, and we max out that levy amount. All cities do. We can go to voters and ask for a property tax increase as a city. We have a couple of different ways we can do that, whether it's through transportation district and the sales tax then would be dedicated specifically to transportation improvement projects, or we could do it for public safety. So go out for a public safety sales tax levy. And then the money raised on the sales tax side would have to be used exclusively for public safety. So again, we're limited on what we can levy councilmanically for sales tax. And that's why I think a lot of cities in our region are starting to rely more heavily on the B&O tax, because between the state and the county, they have such a heavy draw on in creating a heavy burden on taxpayers, whether it's property tax or sales tax. And there is a lot of tax fatigue. But as a city, we don't have the same statutory authority to levy and raise taxes many other ways. And so that really then brings up the question of doing more with less, so making cuts. And I'm really proud of the group of directors I work with and our council and the decisions that actually even prior councils and prior directors have made over the last 10 years, going back to the Great Recession. We had made really significant cuts in staffing, since that is the most expensive piece of our budget is our staff, like most people. And we haven't even recovered to those pre-recessionary staffing levels and even discretionary spending levels. Although our population has grown by 20,000 and we're providing more services. So we really have, over the last 10 to 12 years, done more with less. And that's where, before COVID came into play, this fiscal sustainability issue has been looming over us, because those one-time cuts don't sustain us long-term when our revenue base increases at 2% per year and our average costs increase 3% and 4% per year. So that's to frame historically. I'm not saying that this is exclusively your problem, and our solutions are not meant to be, we don't want to put this exclusively on the backs of businesses, but that's just hopefully so you understand where the city's coming from and how we've gotten to where we are. I know there's some concern about this being a really bad time with COVID, and it's true. It's been terrible timing. We were talking about these as a resource for us 2 days before the COVID shutdowns occurred. So if we had known COVID was occurring, the timing was just terrible on both ends. If it's I know it's not good news, but it may be better news. This isn't a tax that we were looking to put into place into 2021. We wanted to have a good year and a half ramp up. So as it's proposed, the draft proposal right now is that this tax would go into effect January 1st, 2022, then with the first quarter B&O tax being due in the April of 2022. So that's the time frame we're working with. I'm not sure how many of you had known that. But when we're talking about solutions, and I don't know, I'm just throwing this out here. It's more of a brainstorming thing because it just occurred to me. But when we're writing our B&O tax code, even though we have the authority to levy the B&O tax, we have certain deductions and exemptions that we have to have based on the model ordinance. We can add more if we would like. And we also have provisions to add credits for certain types of activities. And one of the credits that most cities put into their code, and I think it's something that we will be considering too, it's a new business tax credit. So it helps, even though it doesn't eliminate a B&O tax forever for a new business coming in, it helps provide them shelter from B&O tax for a certain period of time, whatever our code would dictate, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It would allow them at least a little bit of reprieve to maybe help attract those businesses to come into the city initially. But I'm also wondering if there's a way that, I don't know what kind of lingering effects we're going to still have with COVID as we get into 2022, but we could perhaps think about a way to write in maybe some credit, some provisions for credits as it relates to COVID, so that if we do move forward with the B&O tax, it would help alleviate at least some of the COVID impacts. So the businesses that have suffered the most from COVID or have had the most direct impacts, maybe there's some sort of relief that we could offer in a credit program in the B&O tax code. And then I guess this is actually a really important piece, and I think with all the other groups, I mentioned it right up front, and I just realized I hadn't mentioned it to this group. There's also the question of tax rate and reporting thresholds. So I don't know how big a lot of your tenants are in some of those retail spaces. I'm suspecting some of them are much smaller while others are much larger, but we are looking at protecting, the whole idea is to protect small and local business as much as we possibly can. And really it's looking at our bigger businesses that have the ability to absorb the tax more is really where we are more focused. So we're looking at thresholds, probably nothing less than $500,000. And then even considering some scenarios that would have a threshold of maybe even $750,000. We have a statutory max of a 0.2% rate that we could apply across the board to the different sectors. In our modeling, we only need to generate from the B&O side. We're looking to generate between $4 and $6 million a year from the B&O tax. We've got other resources that we want to use to help bridge the remaining gap. But in that $4 to $6 million, we're looking at probably a 0.05 to 0.1% rate, kind of tiered depending on the sector, knowing that some sectors have higher margins than others. For instance, retail we know is a much lower margin sector. So keeping those rates, those retail rates are generally going to be smaller than the rates that we would propose to the other sectors. So I did a lot of talking. Hopefully that provided a little bit more information about what we're considering right now and ideas of maybe additional things that we can consider as a group, whether you guys could go back and brainstorm what would be some deductions, exemptions, credits that you think would be reasonable, fair, and at the same time promote business in Auburn, because like it's been said many times, it benefits the city for businesses to flourish in the city and want to come in and do business in the city as well.
Thank you, Jamie, for that. I appreciate you giving that synopsis and also kind of responding to the need for maybe additional ideas and how to work with the business community, especially during this time frame. One of the things that I think is important that I would ask the council to look at as you guys have asked Jamie to come to the table with a proposed financial outlook for the next 5 years. I think that it's important to say that obviously this B&O tax is part of that, and it's going to impact our businesses and also impact jobs, right? So if we are going to ask her to do that from her department standpoint, I am wondering, have we asked that from our economic development standpoint, who is here for the city to make sure that we have our businesses, to make sure that we have the jobs for the increase of population? Because if our general fund is paying for those human services for our population increases, and we don't have the jobs to support it, that's going to be a hard factor. It's just going to be circular, right? So what are we as a council doing to make sure that not just financially are we secure in our city, but how are we making sure that the other departments are working alongside to make sure that we are secure as well, meaning our business economy, meaning our jobs? And what does that plan look like? Because that isn't what's being talked about with our business community. I haven't seen that 5-year strategy plan. So for me, that's something that would be beneficial as people are calling me to wonder if they should do business in the Auburn area, right? So I had somebody just this week ask me if there was open warehouse space, and they were looking at it because there isn't a B&O tax. And that was a hard factor because I didn't have anything to go against the fact that I knew that there was one coming down the pipe potentially. And I wanted to find out. So I obviously reached out to the city to see if there was any available warehousing space. And I still haven't even gotten that information back, but yet I'm having to tell people about the financial burdens. So how are we as a city helping us to grow in the business economy alongside of the fact that you guys are trying to help your financial situation?
Well said. So with that said, I mean, Councilmember Baggett and I apologize, Jairaj, or I don't know how to say your name, sir. I apologize.
Jairaj.
Jairaj, okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you guys if any questions, comments, or any questions you have about our businesses and ways of how we operate. We would love to answer those questions and make sure that we're just not sitting up here complaining, because it's not the goal of what we're trying to do. We're trying to find a solution, and just want you to understand the impact that this has on how we operate and how we do our business. And so, but if you have questions or anything you want to say, I'd love to hear from you guys if possible.
Well, the only thing that I would like to add is that, nobody hates taxes any more than I do, and especially for our businesses in the city. And we have gone for many, many years trying to avoid B&O tax, and we've been very successful at that. I think that the COVID pandemic and the lack of revenues coming into the city, some of which the legislature is going to be sunsetting and taken away from the city, which would of course impact our ability to perform the services that we have, even in a growth mode, are very apparent. That we've looked at practically everything that we possibly could as a council and a staff to help mitigate any layoffs of people that have to perform essential services for our city. And the fact that we are actually have shifted money around from different accounts to help offset the $6 to $9 million deficit that we're going to be looking at without doing that. And I think we've done a very good job of doing that. Putting off this B&O as long as we possibly could, I think has been out in the forefront of our thoughts. And I think, as Jamie explained, it's not something that we have done lightly or taken lightly. I really feel that the council has really severely scrutinized and worked with all of our directors of all of the different departments to try to see where we can reduce cost without sacrificing the essential services that our city does need. And I want to emphasize the growth mode, because we're over 86,000 people right now in our city, and we're growing. People are still coming in here. They're buying homes. They're requiring infrastructure services that we have to provide as a city. So I think that our council is really empathetic with all of the businesses. We want our small businesses and our larger businesses to succeed. There's no question in our mind about that. And we will do everything we can to mitigate any extremes, and we will take advantage of any savings, any benefit that we can apply to our businesses to make the impact on their businesses and their revenues as little as possible. So that's kind of my take on it right now.
And I'm going to jump in and say that I agree with Councilmember Baggett with everything he said. Pretty much took my thunder away too. But I empathize with the business owners at this point, especially the small businesses in our town, in our city. I've taken notes and what everybody has said, and I'm going to ponder on it a little bit more. And there were certain things that I wanted to say, but Jamie just kind of filled in all that stuff that we knew about going forward, especially when this is going to take place and what the threshold is going to be. So
believe me, I empathize with all you people, and if there was another way to do it, we'll find, if we can find another way of avoiding this, we will. But like I said, I will definitely look at it.
Thank you. And to be honest, I think I can speak on behalf of everybody. That's all we can ask for is for you to look at it and see what options are available and exercise those options as much as possible. Jamie's done a phenomenal job with communicating to us and showing us, or being as transparent as possible with how the finances are coming through. And speaking on behalf of the chamber, we saw this coming and we understand where we're at, but at the same time, we really want to figure out a way to mitigate it as much as possible, because of how it affects everybody. And now speaking on the retail side, as what Washington Prime, we knew the train was leaving the station. I'm honestly just trying to get it off of our track as much as possible so we can continue to grow and continue to drive business in the city. That's really the honest side of what I'm trying to say, is that we're trying to grow and we're trying to move and just trying to get rid of as many roadblocks as possible from us being able to do that. And so I'll finish what I'm saying now by saying thank you so much for your time and listening to us and hearing what we have to say on this, because it shows the commitment that you have to your businesses as well as your constituents to do the right thing. And so once again, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who is going to be the liaison for the businesses? Is it you, Casey?
So as a chamber, we are here to support and advocacy for our businesses, ultimately, correct, in our city. And so I am always the connector between our businesses, our business and community, community and business, our businesses with city, and moving forward. I have on each one of these sector calls brought in a board member to be able to help me with that, as I want to make sure that when I collect all these notes from each sector meeting, that they're accurate, that they bring about the points that were expressed here today. That's one of the reasons why I record this, so that I can go back through it, because I will be putting together a one pager. It's going to be more than one page, but basically something that summarizes each one of the sectors, I would say, concerns and impacts, so that it can be provided back to the city and as well as the council people. Whenever there is a question in the business community, or if there is a liaison type of need, that's definitely why we are the Auburn Area Connect, and anybody can connect with us. And I will do my best to make sure that those answers are either answered or the connection is either made.
Okay. That's what I needed to know. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, so
before we
go ahead. Yeah, there you go, Larry.
This is Larry, one additional comment. Kudos to the city's building department. We work in various municipalities and in unincorporated areas, and Auburn by far has the most streamlined and efficient and effective way to go from here's what someone would like to do with the space to letting them do it. And we appreciate that and we applaud that. And I believe part of that is because the city has taken a very pragmatic approach as to the regulatory impacts, which they keep it simple. And governmental costs seem to be driven a lot by regulation. And the more complex they are, the more costly it is to administer as well as to adhere to. So any effort that the council can do to keep things simple and minimize complication and regulations will be very helpful to the city and its economic environment and to its citizens as well. Thanks for the opportunity to participate this evening.
And
I would like to add that the city council are great advocates of the KISS principle. And I think that we really follow that pattern wherever we can and whenever we can, especially for our constituents and the businesses in our city.
And I really appreciate hearing the feedback from all of you. It's hard to hear, and I know it's hard for you guys, and I know, and it's hard for me to hear because this isn't easy. It's not an easy solution to bring to the table. It's comfortable for everybody, but I really appreciate your feedback. I find it extremely meaningful, and I continue to roll over in my mind how, as I'm going through and I'm writing our code, how do I incorporate your comments and your feedback as much as I possibly can. So thank you.
Great.
Okay, well, Casey, you want to tie this up here or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, since it is 6 o'clock, I want to again thank you guys all for joining us. I know that we are all working so much right now, especially on Zoom calls. If there are any comments or questions or concerns or anything that you want, again, the council to know, or if the council wants feedback from me or any questions, please feel free to email me at any time. If you have Christian's email, he definitely has a way of getting a hold of me. I'm available all the time by email. And I, again, will have this up. We have all of our sector calls for each week up on Friday on our blog, on our website, so that people can not just view this one, but other ones as well. So please use me as a resource. And one, thank you for being a business in our community. We are greatly appreciative of it. But I want to thank our city staff and council members for being here today as well. So thank you. And I look forward to having more pleasant interactions in the future.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
good night.
Good night.
Have a
Good night.
Bye.